Hi there, and welcome to another in my series for cinematographers. Well, I've been shooting films for over 30 years professionally, broadcast documentaries and dramas, but this is where I like to informally just talk about the craft that I've learnt. And wherever I can, I use examples that I've shot myself, just because those are the ones that I know most about, where the lights are, which lenses we've used, and what's motivated the camera to move or not to move. Plus there's all sorts of other little tips and tricks that I'll throw in, which don't make it to the textbooks, but they always seem to affect the way a scene is shot on the day. So there'll be something for you wherever you are on your journey into the camera department, be it a trainee, an assistant, an operator, or even a DOP in your own right.
So here we are, Ways of Seeing Part 2. And by now you'd have watched Ways of Seeing Part 1, obviously. And just to briefly recap on that, because without seeing Part 1, Part 2 will only make limited sense. But we were looking at some of the great painters as cinematographers. I believe it's important to see yourself as an artist, as a painter. You just happen to be using a different canvas, set of paints. You're using light and a screen. We looked at Rembrandt, some of his works, and how it can inform our own lighting decisions and principles that are explored by artists like him. And Caravaggio we looked at. And they're really great guides for your own work as cinematographers. It doesn't have to be old masters. You can look at modern painters as well, obviously. But there's a certain relevance at looking at the way their traditional approach, their framing, their composition, their use of natural light applies directly to us as cinematographers. Yeah, but modern painters as well. You can find your own ways through, find your own favourite artists and emulate them in your cinematography if that's appropriate to you. Certainly modern stills photographers as well. There are films which are inspired by how things have been captured by stills photographers, for example. Anyway, we looked at Rembrandt. And we also looked at some of the modern masters. And this is an image, as you'll remember. We examined the composition and the lighting and the framing from the 1979 film, which I hope you've seen by now, certainly because I've mentioned it before, Apocalypse Now. A great war film, great anti-war film. Some really beautiful lighting and framing in that film. We had a quick look at this as an inspirational quote. Art is not what you see, but what you make others see. By Edgar Degas. A beautiful illustration there of his. So, what you see through your eyes is unique to you. Nobody else sees the world through your eyes. Your vision is completely unique. If you can refine it, you learn how to use it, and then how to translate it through the camera lens to the audience, then they will begin to see the world through your eyes. Not just the composition, the lighting and the framing, but the story itself. Because as cinematographers, we're a kind of the servant to the story. The way you see things and portray things on your canvas, the screen, is revealing a new world to your audience. So what I want to do now is look at the practical application of that, practical ways of seeing the world and learning to see the world and how to translate it.
With the situation.
Stanley Kubrick here.
Can you do with your head down? Yeah. Well, that's not bad.
This is the film The Shining with Jack Nicholson. I'm sure you've seen that one as well.
Wendy,
If not, take a look at
listen
it.
to me. Let me out of here and I'll forget the whole damn thing.
There he is, released from the tripod.
Like it never happened. Wendy?
I'm gonna go now.
Wendy?
There's early use of the Steadicam in that film by the cinematographer John Alcott, seen there. Garrett Brown is the creator of the Steadicam. And there's the famous scene of the little boy scooting around on his pedal cart in the hotel. And then it was used again in the snow chasing scene, very powerful scene, great lighting. We're seeing the film just for this lighting setup, where you can see the source of the light in the shots. It'd be nice to come back and study that perhaps when we've got more time. Certainly worth a look. So what was he using in that clip that we saw? It was a director's finder, as I'm sure you'll know, or director's viewfinder if you like. And that comprises, as you can see here, it's a little unit that fits on the back of a prime lens. And you hold it with your hand, hey presto, you look through and you can see exactly what the camera is going to see with that lens on. As a director, DP, use it. You can dial in the stop, get an idea of the impression of the depth of field very intuitively. And it just means you can immediately understand what the DOP, the cinematographer, has in mind. So if the director is suggesting a shot or asking the DOP, which lens do you think we should use here? And the DP says, well, I think possibly a 35mm. Well, depending on how much time your director spends actually looking through viewfinders day to day, through lenses, which might not be that great deal of time actually, because a lot of the time they're developing the scripts or on production meetings or in the edit or doing marketing. They're not spending as much time as you are as DOPs just looking through lenses day by day. So if the DP says 35mm and you've got a 35mm that you can look through the finder immediately, it really helps the communication between the DOP and the director. And a good line of communication between the two of you is, it's worth its weight in gold. They can see and visualise immediately what you're talking about. They may say, no, sorry, 35mm is too wide. Can we use something tighter? And you can say, okay, well, let's look at the 50 or the 85. And you can pop those lenses on. So that's what was happening in that little clip. And it kind of, as I said, it releases the director from the constraints of the tripod and looking at life from the height of a tripod. Always encouraging people to look at the world from different angles, and he got on the floor and looked up from the floor. Lenses. These are Zeiss compact primes, and these are a set available to you when you're shooting on the Arri Alexa, which some of you will be doing inevitably, I'm sure, over the next year or two. And then also we've got the set of Zamyang Zines. These are great lenses. Fast, T1.5, so you can get some great depth of field in there. And they're compatible with the Canon mount system, the EOS mount system. So for example, C300 or the 7D, we get them from the Lone Stalls, or the 5D, or whatever Canon camera you've got. And also, of course, we've got the Sony FS7s, which have got a different mounting system. But we've got the Metabones adapters, so you can put these Samyang lenses onto the FS7, Sony FS7, and get some great prime lenses on there. You also got the zoom lens, but it's a very slow lens, a T4, I think, so you're not going to be getting great depth of field. Here in this set, you've got a 14mm, got the 24, 35, 50, and an 85mm, and that's a kind of classic lens combination for any lens box that you get. A set of primes will have those in there. You also got a 135mm next lens up. We've got a couple of those for the FS7s, and I think one for the Alexa. You might do some gimbal work on a Ronin in a tight space, or a car interior, or a cupboard or something, so you might use the A7S. There's no lens on that camera. You can see the sensor inside there. There it is, obviously. And all these cameras have slightly different sensors, different sizes, different number of pixels, different size of pixels. I won't get into it now. There's a whole world full of stuff for the sensor anoraks amongst you. And of course, this camera, which we mentioned earlier, the Arri Alexa, with its own sensor again. Here it is pictured with what looks like something like a 45 to 250mm variable prime or zoom lens, as you might refer to it. We don't have that, but we do have the 135mm. Different sensor though, obviously, on that camera. And of course, if you put the same lens onto a different camera with a different sensor, you can end up with different fields of view. And one of the problems, well, maybe not a problem, maybe one of the opportunities is to combine different lenses with different cameras and different sensors, because you get different fields of view. There's just a few there, well, plenty to take account of on the market. More coming onto the market all the time. We've only got 2 or 3 available here at the moment, thankfully, I think. But there's a whole plethora of sensor sizes which are going to affect what your lenses are going to capture and how they capture it. Don't expect you to learn all these, just need to be aware of it, really. Here's an example of your field of view. If you had a 35mm lens on your Sony FS7 looking down at the world from above, that's the field of view that you would get from whatever height that is, I don't know, 100 foot or something. But if you decided to take that same lens off the FS7 and put it onto your A7S, both Sony cameras, and you can intercut them both quite happily, but you'd get a different field of view. There it is. That's the view you would get. You can see there the A7S shooting 16:9 again with a 35mm lens on. It's a completely different view, and if you marry them together, lay one over the top of the other one, you can see the difference quite clearly between shooting on the A7S or the FS7 with its sensor. Both gorgeous images, don't get hung up about which is better than the other necessarily. They're just different solutions to different practical problems. But it's something you kind of need to be aware of if you're the DOP, the cinematographer. Just need to be aware of that and how to work around it, and just don't get caught out on it. I readily confess I'm not an anorak on these things. There's a little bit of maths involved, and that's not my strong point, I have to say. But I just need to be aware of it, and I need to know that what I'm looking at is what I'm going to get if I go on a shoot, or if I go on a recce. I need to know exactly what I'm going to be looking at with the camera that I'm going to be using. So I thought it would be useful to just take you through the process that I go through if I'm off on a recce, the practical tools and solutions that I've found is a good way of working, that you can adapt or adopt. You might have your own preferred ways, which is fine. If you haven't got a way of working, you could adopt this way until you find a better way, and develop this until it suits you. So how do I go about a recce? What tools do I use that you could utilise, and I'd like you to utilise in the coming months and years, and integrate into your way of working in order to start internalising your way of seeing that we've been talking about? Well, here's something that I'd always like to take with me. We've seen it already, the director's finder, both for myself, so I can see precisely what 35mm lens looks like in the room that I happen to be in for the recce. And I can show the director, I can say, listen, this room isn't big enough, or it's too big, or the corridor isn't long enough, or I can go through the lenses with them. We can work out what the best option is, whether it's actually the best location or not. But taking the set of lenses and a viewfinder is expensive. I mean, you're looking at 150, 200 quid for a cheap set to 500 or 600 for a regular set of prime lenses a day. Plus the director's finder, that's probably another 50 to 100 quid maybe per day. And production probably don't want to shell out that kind of cost. So we need to find a cheaper way of doing it. And a lot of you may know this already, but if you don't know, what I do is I just take my mobile phone with me, whether it's an Android or an iOS, doesn't matter. But there's a couple of apps that we're going to go through now. You can have a look and see which you like, and you can download them and start using them in anger from today or tonight, or whenever you decide to download it, as soon as possible, hopefully. Here's one, Artemis Prime is an app. It's a fantastic app. I haven't personally used it because it costs something like £6,000. Because it comes with this little bit of hardware, which is actually a traditional director's viewfinder, but electronically comprised. So you buy that, you get the software to run your phone or the iPad or whatever it is, and then you just put your prime lenses on the front and it integrates with the software. It's a great system. If you look it up, Artemis Prime, go through some of the offerings that it's got for you in that package. We had Nick Sadler, its creator, down here in Portsmouth, running us through with some students the setups a while ago, which is great. So it's a fantastic system. You can take shots on location with it and then animate with instructions that you might send to the CGI or VFX people. You could circle something and say, take the gorilla out and put a banana in there instead, or change the white sky for a nice blue sky, or take it down 2 stops, or whatever. You can annotate all sorts of information, or put a window in here, or whatever. But obviously, it's expensive. Interesting to see, it's worth looking at, but it's a few bob. Here's an alternative, Artemis Director's Viewfinder. It's like it used to be called Artemis Pro, I think. It's about 30 quid, I think, which I used to run for a number of years, which was really good. But at the time, it was kind of it's on the phone. It doesn't have a physical viewfinder separate. Your actual mobile becomes the viewfinder, so you won't be taking a set of prime lenses with you. That's about 30 odd quid. I did use that until I junked my iPhone, and then I went on to Android, and I put Artemis on that, but it didn't really work quite as smoothly, so I've abandoned it. I'm using something else now, which I'll look at in a minute. But with Artemis, there's another program called Helios Pro. It goes hand in hand with it, which again, that's another 30 odd quid, but it interfaces with Artemis, and it works with Google Earth, and that enables you to look at locations, see what the sun's going to be doing, at various times of day and certain days of the year. You can plot all sorts of trigonometry, lens trigonometry, and do more detailed virtual scouting, if you like, if you want to do that. Again, it's a few bob. And I have to say, I didn't find it the easiest system to use, Helios. But if you're a tech head, it might suit you. So take a look at it anyway. I used to use that. I now use, I'm a real cheapskate, so I use a free sun position, sunrise and sunset app, a demo version, which is a freebie. And it's obviously not as comprehensive, but it kind of does what I need it to do on a quick recce. So I recommend it. So there's another, in terms of the viewfinder, or the finders that we're looking at, the Sony Magic Viewfinder is great. What's good about it? It's free. Brilliant. Suits me. So I recommend you download this, because it'll work for the Sony cameras that we've got. We'll talk about it more in a minute. And furthermore, there's a whole range of magic finders that Roman Vedvid has created. There's one for the Canon there. There's another one you can get for the Arri. You might have a Lumix camera, but there's all sorts of variations you can download for the phone. I've certainly got the Canon and the Arri on my phone, and the Sony, because we're running those cameras here. So I recommend that, unless you want to buy something. If you've got the money, fine. Otherwise, download something like this, get them up and running. There's another one I've been using recently, which is Cadrage, or Cadrage, Director's Viewfinder. Don't know how you pronounce it. And that's about 30 quid, I think, which I've got installed. But I'm finding that quite useful, and I'll explain why as we go through. He's showing you how I use it on locations. Never quite know where you're going to end up in the world shooting.
That's supposed to be changed into King's Landing.
So that was the approach to the Kingdom of Heaven set in a little town called Ouarzazate in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. It's actually a set that we were going to be filming on, or were filming on, and it was built for the Kingdom of Heaven movie, Orlando Bloom movie, which you can check out if you haven't already seen it. I'm not a huge fan, but if you like a bit of spectacle, it's there. It's an amazing set. It's built with the same back and front, so that they can have mirrored image for sunset or sunrise. So if you're shooting a sunset, you can pretend it's sunrise, and vice versa, according to your schedule in the day. Ridley Scott movie. You might have seen Thelma and Louise. See it if you haven't. That's the view of the set anyway. I'm going to just click through a few slides to show what it's like inside there, and what I was doing in there, and how I was approaching doing some of the shots that we had to do. Here's an angle. You can see one of the scenes I have to shoot is people coming into the city of Jerusalem through one of the gates. I don't know if you've ever been to the city, but there's various gateways into the old town, and this emulates one of them. And I've taken a shot on my Cadrage app of the gateway, and I've backed off as much as I can, pretty much, and I've showing there what lens is going to give me what field of view from where I'm standing. You can see that I've got a 135mm, an 85mm, 50, a 35mm, a 24mm, and the 14mm. I'll get that view. my phone doesn't have a wide enough lens in it. It's a cheap one, so it doesn't show all of the scene. So the app just puts it in black, and you've got to imagine what's there. If you've got a phone with a wide lens, well, you're laughing. In fact, I found that for my money, if I went further, well, out of the set, I sort of backed out through that arch. It helped because I had another doorway there, and I had a sort of a frame within a frame. The verticals aren't sorted out; it's just taken on a phone, but that helped make that distant wide shot more interesting. And in the plot, in the script, when people come through the door and start speaking from a platform, I think that's the guy from the art department there working out where to put the platform for me so I can see it according to my shot. So it's really useful, this app, to put a lens on and see what you're going to be seeing and explain to the director, show the director what you're going to be seeing. In fact, this is begging for a tracking shot in here, isn't it? If I laid a little track, had the grip layer track coming backwards out of the doorway, and then you could just push in, couldn't you, slowly through this outer archway to reveal the bustle of the scene. Have some extras coming in to kind of take the track with them. That'd be a nice angle on a wide lens. More preferable, I think. So it's fantastic for finding frames and registering, logic, filing it away. Great system. A few other little shots just to demonstrate what I get up to. I take as many photographs as I can on this app. This is a great location in the middle of nowhere. Some beautiful palm trees. What's not to like? About 15 minutes drive up some rough tracks to this location from the studio where we're based. I've just put on a 14mm lens there. I'm drawn to this view because of its composition, and there's this big boulder isolated in the foreground, which I think might be useful as a prop. I don't know, it might be an opportunity for something to be placed on it, or somebody to stand by or something, or just use a little crane shot. You could crane onto it. Anyway, that's what it looks like with a 14mm lens on the Sony f55. I specified on the app. You can see we're expecting to shoot on a Sony f55, which is very much like the FS7 actually, a little bit older, professional camera. And then while I'm there, I'll have a quick look and see what the other lenses would give me from that viewpoint, from that camera position. And you can see what you're going to get if you put an 85 on. Here's another view from the recce. You can see the director and producer talking about the scene. I'm trying to work out a way into that scene. At the beginning, how we're going to get into this space, which is a big courtyard area inside. You can see the steps going up in the background and the burnt out wall and doorway all overexposed in the distance. And I'm working out how we're going to get the camera and the actors in there. What I did in the end is I laid a track on the floor here, going in, similar to that last shot we were talking about. So I laid a track in there, and then I put the seat on the dolly on the track, seat on the dolly, and then instead of putting the camera onto the dolly directly, instead of that, I had my camera operator, Mark Marive, who's the second unit DOP, sit on there for me, and I had him have the camera on his shoulder, sort of handheld if you like, sitting on the dolly, and the grip would just tracking him in very slowly in a really smooth tracking shot, so it looked like a track. And then just as the doors open in the distance, there'd be a crowd baying at this actor who was being followed by the camera, and at that point it would reach the end of the track and my camera operator Mark would glide, if you like, off the track, and the camera would become handheld on his shoulder. So it would then lack all the smoothness. It would have that sudden immediacy and urgency of a handheld shot. So it was suddenly into a sort of documentary feel. And it enabled me to give that feel, that transition feel, without having to cut. Well, unless the editor decides to make a cut. But I thought it was just a neat trick, and it was fun to do, to experiment. Complicated to set up with all the choreography, but worth it anyway. A bit of a distraction there, but I didn't decide that when I went back to shoot it, but I had time to think about it from the recce material, and this gave me a reference. I could go away, think, how am I going to do that shot without the pressure of the moment on me? So in that app, anyway, there's various parameters, as with any app that you can get. For example, you can tell the camera what sensor, what camera you're going to be using. You can set that. And here I've set the FS7. Well, there's other cameras that you can see there. I think the F55 is in there somewhere, further down, and the F5 probably down there somewhere. For this demo, I've just put FS7 on it. And there's all sorts of other things you can change as well. I won't go through them all, but there's some frame guides. You can have grids, golden section. I'll put it to 16:9 by default. And you can put the rule of thirds guide if you want to. You can do. I don't generally, but it's quite useful actually, especially if you're learning how to, not learning, exploring the rule of thirds system. Having this on your viewfinder screen is actually quite useful. I've just taken a shot here against a white wall just so that you can see the frame lines clearly, but it's worth having it up on here, because you can just go out and start playing and thinking about all of your compositions all the time. How does your composition use the rule of thirds? Are you using the rule of thirds? You don't have to, but it's good to explore and then break away from and come back to. And actually, if I go back and look at a lot of my compositions, I'm not consciously thinking about rule of thirds at all, but subconsciously I am operating it and integrating it into my compositions a lot of the time. So it's useful. You don't have to, but it's there. Here's another little option that you've got on this app. It's really useful if you're a focus puller or a professional focus puller. As a DOP, I might ask my focus puller, if I put a 85mm lens on this shot and shoot it at f1.5 or something, t1.5, then what's my focus parameter? What's the envelope? If I'm 6.5 feet away from the subject. You can see the subject distance is 6.5 feet. That's the focal point. If I was shooting at 2.8, my furthest distance is going to be 8'2", and my shortest depth is going to be 5'4". You can change that to centimetres if you're that way inclined. But then you can work out, before you put the lens on, if I'm shooting something which needs to be that deep, the focus needs to be that specific to incorporate their nose and ear, for example, I could shoot it at f2.8, or if I just want that eye in focus, I can go down into inches and ask my focus puller what the calculation is, and they can work it out pretty quickly. Anyway, it gets technical here, but you might get into it in due course. There's no pressure at the moment. Anyway, you turn up at your location and you're presented with a view. Take a look at it. You think, what a beautiful view. This is something I'd really like to shoot for this scene. How am I going to go about it? What lenses do I want? Let's get some information about it while I'm here on the recce. So I'll catch all these kind of details while I'm there. I know that by the time I leave, that this is the shot that I want, and I expect to be on a 24mm, pretty wide, but not so wide that it distorts the horizon, for example. I'm going to be on the Sony f55 at 16:9. I can also put the name of the film. I've called it The Covenant, the location, the Red Sea, the Nile. Obviously, the geographers amongst you will know that the Red Sea and the Nile are in the Middle East, not in North Africa, Morocco, or Northwest Africa, anyway. But it doubles at it. The scenery is a very good match. Its coordinates are down there as well, actually. And you can't help but think of shots here, actually, can you, really? I mean, if this was an end frame, you might start your frame higher up with those hills in the background at the bottom of the frame and the sky at the top. And then you could just jib down very slowly, couldn't you, and reveal all the water, and then this foreground with the submerged rocks, the lapping waves, depending on what the weather's like on the day. Try and get the sunlight in the right direction. But anyway, it's a great reference shot with packed full of information. And I can put more information in there, actually. Choose to. I can include the location coordinates. For example, I've got that checkbox ticked. I don't have Package Manager activated. I'm too tight to pay for it. But at the end of the day, when you've recorded all those locations, you can save all those photographs into a folder. I've called that folder The Covenant, and I've put all those images from those different locations and the date, the lens. That's all stored in the app on the phone. It's all organised for me automatically, which I love that. What I can then do in this CAD Rage app, and I love this, I just automatically create a PDF, which is all the information for myself and the camera department, but I can pass it on to the production company, the director, the producer, location manager. I just enter a PDF title. I'll call it Exteriors Morocco. Yeah. And then I can send them that PDF by email or upload it to Dropbox. I don't know how you organise yourselves, but this app is linked to Dropbox. I don't think it's linked to Google Drive at the moment. Doesn't really matter as a workaround. But there you go. You can upload it and send that whole PDF to your production manager or director, to your camera department, anybody you want to. And it's got pages of all the information that you've selected to send. These are just 4 of them. Out of hundreds, it's just 4. We'll pull out a little bit of detail on one of them. Here's a shot inside of a mountain. You can tell that it's for the Covenant film folder. The location is connected to the well scene, which locally is called Tigert. And then it says it's a 35mm lens there. It's on the Sony f55. Remember, everybody, 16:9. I can put more data if I want to. That's where the photograph was taken. That's time of day, the date. And I love this. It saves the location coordinates and even gives me the hyperlink to the Google Maps location. Automatically, it just does it without you thinking about it, which is so useful, not just for me, but for the production manager and the producer. They know exactly where the location is. If you're on a recce on your own, or just 1 or 2 of you, it's really useful to have this stuff, because it's quite possible that you're the only one collecting this data. It may be on the day of the shoot that the camera department doesn't have to be there until 6:30 in the morning. But the catering team have to be there at 6 o'clock the previous night to put the tents up. So they want to know exactly where to go. And if you've got the GPS coordinates that you can give them, or give the production manager, well, you're good news. And being good news to production is a part of the battle of getting the job. It's not just the shots, but it's the extras that you can provide to make their job easier. Why don't we get that cinematographer who gave us all the GPS coordinates for the locations. He was brilliant. She was great. Let's get her back again. Anyway, it's really useful. It's up to you. And of course, you can make some notes at the time, or go back to the hotel room, make some notes. This needs to be shot between 6 and 9 in the morning in order to ensure that we get the glancing light falling across the rock face to reveal the texture. Sun's gone a bit too far, you can see there. I think I was there at about 4:30 in the afternoon. But we need to be there early, so I'll make a note of that. And then the production manager can try and schedule the shoot to be when I want to be there. Okay, let's do the interior from 11 o'clock onwards, and then first thing in the morning, before that, we can be at this location. And then as a cinematography, you've got the light exactly where you want it. That's going to make such a difference to you. If you can shoot the time of the day that you want to shoot it in, your images are going to be more beautiful. That's what you want. You want the best possible light you can get. A couple of other little notes I've made for myself and the camera team. I need ND-grads and a polarizer, because if I'm shooting at right angles to the sun, the polarizer is really going to help me to get some contrast and detail out of the sky if I want to do that. And for the grip, I've asked for a track and a low slung dolly, because on this side of the mountain where I am, you can just about make out the bottom right hand corner. There's some low rock and some boulders there on the side of the ravine, and I just thought it'd be nice to have a sort of a low tracking shot from behind the foreground boulders, revealing that landscape behind that vista. So you just don't come to it immediately, you just reveal it. The scale is huge. I mean, if you put a person on the top of that hill, you'd never see them. It's an ant up there. It's, I don't know, 500 or 600 feet drop there. Speaking of which, health and safety, I said cliff edge, so that when they come back to shoot, they need to factor that into the dreaded risk assessment. Put a soft cushion at the bottom of the mountain, perhaps, so if anybody falls off, they get a soft landing, or however you want to work it out in your risk assessment. But these location coordinates, they're so useful. If you click on them within the app, if you've got Wi-Fi signal, it takes you straight into Google Maps and dumps you at the location. Well, here it is, in fact. It's Google Maps, so you can zoom in, zoom out, you take me there, and it's down beaten tracks. You know, nobody's going to find it. It's off the road, as you can see. It's dust tracks. Nobody's going to find it unless it's been put into a GPS unit. Really terrific facility to have. So I think that's a good place to take a pause. And in part 3, I'm going to be looking at the Sun app that I use and some of the ways that I use these apps to look at my shots and my scenes and construct them. So grab a cup of tea. I'll catch you at the next stop.